How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf 59, Daf Nun Tes, Daf 59 of Masechta Menachos, friends. On Daf 59, we're going to learn two mishnayos. We are going to learn about oil and frankincense requirements for menachos. Okay, we're going to, in the first mishnah, we go through different kinds of menachos and we detail, do they require oil? Do they require frankincense? And that is essentially what the topic, with the focus of the Gemara on that Mishnah is going to be boot. And then we learn another Mishnah which focuses specifically on oil and or frankincense added to a minchas chotei. Of course, we know that a minchas chotei is just flour. We discussed the other day about possibly being able to add water to it, but certainly the Torah says lo yasim alea shemen v'lo yitin alea levona mincha hi, that a minchas chotei does not have any flour, nor does it of course it has flour. It does not have any oil, nor does it have frankincense. What happens if someone adds oil? What happens if somebody adds frankincense? Friends, stick with me and you'll find out. Friends, we begin on Daf Nun Tes Amid Aleph, all the way at the top at the Mishnah. Yesh tunis shemen vilivona. There are menachos that require oil and frankincense. Shemen velo levona. There are menachos that require oil, but no frankincense. Levona velo shemen. Frankincense, but no oil. Lo levona velo shemen. No frankincense, no oil. Basically, the whole gamut. Ve'elu tunis shemen vilivona. The following minachos require oil and frankincense. Minchas hasolas, ve'amachvas, ve'amarcheshes, ve'achalis, ve'arikikin. All of those types of minchas require oil and require frankincense. Minchas kohanim, which are basically the same as the previous minachos, just when offered by a kohen. Minchas kohen Mashiach, the minchas chavitin. Minchas ovid kuchovim, a mincha offering offered by a Gentile. Minchas nashim, a korban mincha offered by a woman. Minchas haomer, and the minchas haomer that we offer on the, God willing, we will be offering the minchas haomer in a little bit less than a month from now. What is it? Today is the 22nd of the month of Adar. On the 16th of the month of Nisan, God willing, we will be offering a korban haomer. Minchas nisachim tuna shemen. Minchas nisachim, those are the menachos that are offered with certain korbanos. So those are flour and oil. Vein tuna levona, but there is no frankincense for minchas nisachim. Lechem haponim, the showbreads. Of course, we know that there were the shnei baziche levona, ton levona, vein ton shemen. There was frankincense, but no oil. Shtei alechem, when it comes to the shtei alechem, uminchas chotei, uminchas kinaos by a sota, ein tunin lo shem velo levona. No oil, no frankincense. Givaldig. So we just went through a whole bunch of different maybe all the different kinds of menachos, and went through whether they require oil, frankincense, both, none. Givaldig. On this stuff, there's going to be like a lot of these kinds of lists, kind of kazeh. A lot, especially later on in the daf, there's going to be like a lot of like listing things, kind of like we just did this, like this mincha as these requirements, this mincha as that requirements, etc. There's going to be a lot of kind of going through stuff on this daf. Friends, I'm going to drink a little water. Gemara time. Omer Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, called Eicha de Tnan, Eser Tnan. That whenever the Mishnah is talking about different loaves of different loaves that are brought with menachos, like chales and rikikin and the machvas and all that sort of stuff, we're talking about 10 loaves each. La'afukim de Reb Shimon, and this is unlike Reb Shimon. The point is that unlike Reb Shimon, the Amar mechza chalus mechzas rekikin yavi kamash milan dilo. What Reb Papa is saying is that we're going to learn a Mishnah in 4 days from now, in Daf Samech Gimel. We are going to learn a Mishnah, and in that Mishnah, Reb Shimon says that when it comes to a maifesoner, a minchas maifesoner, if a person says that I'm going to bring a baked mincha, so there's two options. One is that it could be chalas. The other is that it could be rekikin. Rekikin are kind of thinly baked, and chalas are more thickly baked. But again, we haven't really gotten so much into those details. I hope that we still have about a month and a half or so left in Masechta Menachos. I hope that we will get more into those details and understand a little bit better how they work. But anyways, so Reb Papa is saying that whenever the Mishnah is talking about different menachos and how many loaves, we're talking about 10 loaves each, to the exclusion of Reb Shimon, who says that when it comes to a mincha ma'ifesoner, so the Mishnah there on Daf Samech Gimel says that you should bring 10 of each, right? What does the Mishnah say? Lo yavi mechza chalus u'mechza rekikin. So the Mishnah says you shouldn't bring 5 chalas and 5 rekikins. You should bring either 10 chalas or 10 rekikin. Reb Shimon says you can even if you brought 5 chalas and 10 rekikin, it would be okay. Reb Papa is saying that generally when the Mishnah is talking about loaves, it's talking about 10 loaves, i.e., unlike Reb Shimon who says that there's a possibility of 5 chalas and 5 rekikin. No. When the Mishnah talks about loaves, it's talking about 10. So either you bring 10 chalas or you bring 10 rekikin. And I believe also by the machbas and by the marcheshes also, we're talking, right, those are fried in deep dishes, thinner dishes, and those would be, I believe, 10 little cakes of sorts for a marcheshes, for a machbas. Okay, fine. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, okay, so the pasuk says by minchas ha'omer, the pasuk says, v'nasato le'Hashem v'samto le'levona, that on a minchas ha'omer, it is brought with oil. The minchas ha'omer has oil in it, and it has frankincense in it. Now, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, v'nasato aleh Hashem. It says by minchas ha'omer, v'nasato aleha, on it you will put oil. V'lo alechem aponim shemen. The minchas ha'omer has oil. The lechem aponim does not have oil. It has frankincense, but it does not have oil. Sheyachol v'aladinu, because I may have thought to make the following kal v'chomer, that if by minchas nisachim, where there's no frankincense, right? A mincha that's brought with a korban, there's oil, but there's no frankincense. So if by minchas nisachim, where there's no frankincense, and yet there's oil, so certainly by lechem aponim, where there's frankincense, certainly there should be oil. I can make the following kavachomer. Uma minchas nisachim, when it comes to minchas nisachim that are brought with korbanis, she'ena tuna levona tuna shemen, that they're more lenient in that there's no requirement for levona, and yet when it comes to oil, there you bring oil. So lechem aponim, sheton levona, lechem aponim, we're bringing frankincense. We're doing more, we're bringing frankincense. Certainly, then you should be bringing oil as well. Enudin sheton shemen, tamlemer aleo shemen v'lo lechem aponim shemen. Therefore, the pasuk says by minchas ha'omer aleh shemen, that on the minchas ha'omer there's oil, to the exclusion of lechem aponim there is no oil lechem aponim. There is frankincense but no oil. Now we're going to make a similar argument in terms of levona for minchas nisachim. V'samto aleh levona, put on the minchas ha'omer levona. Aleh levona v'lo minchas nisachim levona, but not on the minchas nisachim. No levona for the minchas nisachim. Shochav aladinu, I could have made the opposite kavachomer, that if by the lechem aponim, where there is no oil, but there is frankincense, certainly by the minchas nisachim, where there is oil, certainly there should be frankincense. Uma lechem aponim she'eino to'un shemen, ta'un levona. Minchas nisachim shetu'una shemen enu din shetuna levona. Minchas nisachim that already requires oil, certainly it should require the levona. Talmud Omer alea levona v'la minchas nisachim levona. It says by the minchas Omer, on it there is frankincense, on it, but not on the minchas nisachim. No frankincense for the minchas nisachim. Yes, oil, no frankincense. Mincha, right? When it says by the minchas Omer, it says mincha he. We're now going to darshan mincha and he. Mincha l'rabbis minchas shmini l'levona. Mincha is coming to teach that even the minchas shmini on the Yom Akomas HaMishkan, on the first day of Nisan of the second year in the wilderness, that was the day of the Yom Akomas HaMishkan, and Moshe says to Aharon that he's going to offer that day a korban mincha, and the question that we're asking is, does that mincha of the Yom HaKomas HaMishkan, did it require levona or not? So by default we would say not, because we have no indication that there was levona. It was a one-off thing. We can't learn it out from any other sort of standard minachos. So, okay, so the Moshe Rabbeinu says to bring a mincha. It's going to be kind of a, by default, it's just going to be a flour offering. And comes by minchas Omer, it says mincha to include that the minchas shmini also would have livona. So mincha l'rabas minchas shmini lilivona, and he, when it says mincha, he lotzi shtei alechem, to the exclusion of shtei alechem shalo yitanu lo shemen v'lo livona, that the shtei alechem has no oil and no frankincense. Well, my throat has been like a little bit raspy. I really hope it doesn't get worse. I don't mind if it stays like this. I just hope it doesn't get worse. Oh, losing my voice in Babble on Talmud is mudna. Also, I'm in a place where I can't, not recording is not an option. Double negative. I need to record because I have no buffer. So, can you imagine? Okay, let's go weiter. So hopefully it's not going to get worse. Omer Mar, so now we're going to go over this brisa. Now, okay, we're going to go over this brisa. This brisa basically had 4 sections. Section number 1 said that mincha, that lechem aponim has no livona, has no oil. Section number 2 said that minchas nisachim has no livona. Section number 3 said that minchas shmini has livona. And section number 4 said that leshtei alechem has no oil and no livona. We're going to go through each one of those sections and we're going to ask questions about it. There are going to be lots of long lists that we are going to encounter over the next chunk of the Gemara. I think my intention is to go through all of the items in the list. We'll see. I think that there's, I'm telling you, long lists. I think my intention is to go through all the items in the lists, but I think we'll see. Amar Mar, we said earlier, Oleh al shemen, that the minchas Omer has oil, velo al lechem aponim, but the lechem aponim does not have oil. It has frankincense but no oil. Velo al lechem aponim shemen. Ema oleh al shemen velo al minchas kohanim shemen. The Gemara suggests that maybe what it means is that the minchas Omer has oil, and what doesn't have oil? We said the lechem aponim doesn't have oil, but maybe that's not correct. Maybe it's that minchas kohanim does not have oil. That when a kohen brings a minchas soles, for example, no oil. Maybe that's what it means. Nothing to do with the lechem aponim. Rather, the minchas kohanim has no oil. Minchas Omer has oil. Minchas kohanim doesn't have oil. So mistaver minchas kohanim hava leder abuyet. So the Gemara says, well, it makes more sense if we're choosing between minchas kohanim and lechem aponim. It makes more sense to say that the minchas kohanim has oil. How come? Shekain isaron, because we're going to give a list now of things that the minchas kohanim and the minchas Omer have in common. I repeat, we're going to go over a list now of things that the minchas Kohanim and the minchas ha'omer have in common. That is, isaron. Each of them are one isaron, as opposed to the lechem hapanim are each two isarons. Kli, they need to be mixed in a vessel. Chutz, they are both offered on the mizbeach hachitzon, as opposed to lechem hapanim, which is in the heichel. Vitsura, that's like ibor tsura. Ibor tsura is that basically it's pasul belina. Both the omer and the minchas kohanim would be pasul belina. The lechem hapanim, of course, is in the heichel all week. Hagasha, you have to bring them to the mizbeach. Ve'ishim, and they are burnt on the mizbeach. Adraba fakert lechem hapanim avalei rabuye. We say, 1 second, I'll give you a whole list of things that lechem hapanim has in common with minchas ha'omer, to say that it's the lechem hapanim that should require oil, and that it's the minchas kohanim that should not require oil. Here are the things that minchas ha'omer and the lechem hapanim have in common. Tzibura, they are both korban tziburs. Chova, they are both obligatory. Again, the lechem hapanim and the minchas ha'omer, yes, they are both obligatory. Tamya, they could be offered betuma because they're korban tziburs. De'achil, you eat them. The minchas ha'omer, the kometz goes on the mizbeach, and the shirayim goes to the kohanim, and of course the lechem hapanim are eaten by the kohanim. Pigula, there could be pigul, right? Since there is a matir, right, as opposed to the minchas kohanim where it's entirely burnt on the mizbeach, so there's no concept of pigul. But by the minchas ha'omer, for example, I don't know if you burn the kometz with the intention to eat it, chutz zmanos, so there could be pigul by the minchas omer and by the lechem hapanim, because there's the bazichin by the lechem hapanim that you can have machshavas pigul. B'Shabbos, they are offered on Shabbos. Mistav and nefesh. The Gemara answers, I see your lists. However, it says by a regular korban mincha, it says v'nefesh ki sakriv korban mincha l'Hashem solis yakobano v'yotzak l'Hashem v'nosim le'levona, that the pasuk by a mincha of an individual says nefesh, any individual, and it says there oil and frankincense. So because we see from the pasuk of nefesh that basically said, look, we learn from there that any korban of any mincha of an individual, including minchas kohanim is the same thing as anybody else's mincha, except that it happens to be brought by a kohanim, and the difference is that it's entirely burnt on the mizbeach, but it's the same menachos otherwise. So any mincha offered by an individual has oil, has frankincense. So therefore, to suggest that a minchas kohanim has no oil is not an option. Of course, a minchas kohanim has oil. Therefore, what doesn't have oil, lechem hapanim. Okay, next explanation. Amar Mar, we said earlier, alea levona v'lo minchas nesachim levona. We said that the minchas ha'omer has livona, the minchas nisachim, that is brought with korbanos, does not have livona. Ema alea livona v'lo minchas kohanim livona. Similarly, like we did earlier, let's say that the minchas ha'omer has livona, and it's the minchas kohanim that has no livona, not the minchas nisachim that has no livona. Now, again, here comes the following list. Mistavra minchas kohanim havalei l'rabuye. No, I will give you a list of all the things that minchas kohanim has in common with minchas ha'omer to suggest that there should be livona for the minchas kohanim, and therefore it's the minchas nisachim that has no livona. Here are the similarities between the minchas kohanim and the minchas ha'omer. Shekain isaron, both are in isaron, as opposed to minchas nisachim, which is, well, it could be multiple isarons. Minchas nisachim, depending on the animal, could be 1 isaron, 2 isarons, 3 isarons. Was there a Rashi in that? I don't remember seeing a Rashi on this, but I assume that is the point. Yeah, I don't think there's a Rashi on that, but I think that's the point. Minchas nisachim, depending on the animal, is the amount of isarons, whereas the minchas kohanim and the minchas omer are both in isaron. Babble belog, they are, right, the minchas kohanim and the minchas omer is 1 log of oil for 1 isaron. Or maybe that's the point. Maybe it's taka isaron babble belog, maybe is the point. Okay. Whereas the by minchas nisachim, 1 isaron has either 2 or 3 logs. Mugash, the minchas kohanim and the minchas omer are brought to the mizbeach. Biglal etzem, they are brought on their own, as opposed to minchas nisachim, which is brought with a korban. Now, adrab fakeret I will list all of the things that a minchas nisachim has in common with the minchas omer to say that the minchas nisachim should have the frankincense. Minchas nisachim have leather abuid. Minchas nisachim should have frankincense, just like the minchas omer. Shekain, what they have in common is tzibura. They are both communal, or at least I don't think that the minchas nisachim. We have to learn more about the minchas nisachim, but I don't think it's exclusively for communal offerings. I also think that if you bring a korban ola, if an individual brings a korban ola or korban shlam, I think that there is also minchas nisachim there. But it is also brought with tzibur as opposed to minchas kohanim is literally just the private korban mincha of a kohen. Chova, minchas nisachim, minchas haomer are obligatory. The itame, they're brought bituma, shabsa, they're offered on Shabbos. Again, mistavra nefesh. Once again, at the end of the day, the minchas kohanim is an it's a nefesh. It's an individual korban mincha, and by all individual korban minchas, there is oil, there is frankincense. Done deal. Therefore, what's excluded from frankincense? Minchas nisachim. Mincha l'rabbis minchas shmini. When it said mincha, we said to include minchas shmini that was brought on the yom, that was offered on the yom hakama samishkan, to say that there was frankincense offered with that korban mincha. So l'rabbis minchas shmini l'levona, to say that there is levona there. Ve'ema l'hotzi, I will suggest to exclude minchas. Maybe it's saying that minchas shmini did not have levona. Hai mayoma b'shlama l'rabba shapir. One second, I don't get it. If we're saying that it's to include the minchas shmini for levona, I get it. I had no reason to assume that it had levona. Comes mincha to say, it actually does have levona, to include it. But if you say to exclude it from levona, why do I need to exclude the minchas shmini from levona? I never would have had the havmina to have included it for levona in the first place, because shamidaris lo yafinan. We're not going to learn necessarily a one-off korban mincha from a standard for all generations korban mincha. For all generations korban menachos, there is levona, but we can't just say, okay, because for all generations menachos is, there's also levona for this one-off mincha. No, therefore we have no reason to assume that the minchas shmini had levona to begin with. Comes mincha to say itaka does have levona, and finally he lehotzi shtei alechem shlo yitanu lo shemiv lo levona. And when it says by the minchas omer mincha it is a mincha to the exclusion of shtei alechem. By shtei alechem there is no oil and there is no frankincense. The ema lehotzi minchas kohanim. Maybe it's to exclude minchas kohanim. Maybe minchas kohanim has no oil and no frankincense. Mistav minchas kohanim have the rabuye. No, I'll give you a list of things that minchas kohanim has in common with minchas haomer. Shekain isaron, they are both in isaron. So maybe that's an indication from earlier that we're talking about dafkin and isaron, as opposed to shtei alechem is, I guess, 2 isarons. Maybe is the point. Shtei alechem, I believe, is 2 isarons. Although I think it's 1 isaron per shtei alechem, per lechem. But anyways, matzah, and they are matzah, as opposed to shtei alechem is chametz. Ve'etzim, they are brought on their own. Shtei alechem is brought with the kivsei atzeres, as we know. Hagasha, you have to bring the minchas kohanim and minchas haomer to the mizbeach, the ishim, and they are burnt on the mizbeach. Shtei alechem, of course, is eaten. Adrabo, funkt fakir, I'll argue fakert. Shtei alechem, I'll give you a list of all of the things that shtei alechem has in common with the minchas omer, to say that shtei alechem should have oil and frankincense. Shekain sibor, okay, they're both public offerings. Chova, they're obligatory. Tamir, they're offered even in a state of tumah, because they're public offerings. The ochal, and you eat them, as opposed to the minchas kohanim, which is entirely burned. Pigula, there's a potential for machshavas pigul with the shtei alechem and the minchas omer. B'shabsa, they're offered on Shabbos. Matir, the minchas omer is matir the chadash outside of the Beis Hamikdash. The shtei alechem is matir chadash in the Beis Hamikdash. I made a mistake, I believe yesterday. Yesterday I had said that Shtei Alechem allows the wheat minachis in the base hamikdash to be brought from the chadash. But the truth is, even the I actually noticed on Rashi and Chumash yesterday that actually it's also matir the barley. So even though the minchas ha'omer, as we'll see in just a second, is it even the next thing on the list? No, it's not the next thing on the list, but one of the things on the list that we'll get to is chadash, that both the shtei alechem and the minchas omer are brought from the new grain. So even though the minchas omer is offered from the new barley, if there's a sota between Pesach and Shavuos, so that sota, her mincha would not be new barley, but rather it would still be old barley, right? All the menachos in the Beis Hamikdash, except for the minchas omer, can only be offered from the new grain post shtei alechem, and that isn't just the wheat menachos, which are most of the menachos, but even the barley menachos. Omela menachos, even the minchas sota can only be offered from the new grain post the shtei alechem on Shavuos. Okay, so the korban ha'omer is matir the chadash outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Shtei alechem is matir the chadash in the Beis Hamikdash. So that's matir. Tenufa, they are both waived. Ba'aretz, they have to be, both the omer and the shtei alechem have to be offered from the grain of Eretz Yisrael. Masha'en kein all the menachos. Bizman, they have a specific time. Pesach, Shavuos, Chadash, as we said, they have to be offered, right? They're offered from the new grains. Ve'hane nefishon. And the list of things that the shtei alechem has in common with the minchas ha'omer is a longer list than the list of things that the minchas kohanim has in common with the minchas ha'omer. So I'll make the argument that the shtei alechem should have oil and frankincense like the minchas ha'omer, to which we say at the end of the day, mistavra nefesh, at the end of the day, the minchas kohanim is a mincha of an individual, and individual minachas have oil and have frankincense. So therefore, to suggest that minchas kohanim does not have oil and frankincense is off the table. And therefore, which mincha does not have oil and frankincense? The shtei alechem. Givaldig. So yeah, that was like a lot of long lists of things, but all right, Baruch Hashem, the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted us to learn lists today. What can I tell you? Friends, now we move on to the second section and the second Mishnah of today's daf, which discusses oil and or frankincense added to a minchas chotei. We learned in the previous Mishnah and many times prior that a minchas chotei, already Masechet Shavuos, we must have talked about it, that a minchas chotei, there is no oil and no frankincense. What if somebody oiled or frankincensed a minchas chotei? Zogt the Mishnah v'chayev al hashemen b'fnei atzmo v'chayev al levona b'fnei atzmo. If a person adds oil to a minchas chotei and adds frankincense to a minchas chotei, he will be chayev for each one separately. Again, v'chayev al hashemen b'fnei atzmo, he is chayev for the shemen on its own, v'chayev al levona b'fnei atzmo, and levona on its own, if they are added to the minchas chotei. Nosan aleh shemen psola, when oil is added to a minchas chotei, the minchas chotei is posel. Levona, if levona is added to the minchas chotei, yil kitena, push it, remove it. Just remove it. Levona, of course, are these little they're like nuggets of levona. Levona, I didn't bring I was thinking about getting a photo of it. We've seen photos of it in the past, but it's like these little nuggets. They kind of look like, if you ever look at like dried ginger, you can go you get those little shticklich of dried ginger. They're like ginger candies. They look kind of like ginger candies. So if you add levona to the minchas chotei, so it's possible, but just pick it out and then it's unpossible. Nosan shemen al shiyorel and over below saisei. Now, if the kohanim take a kometz, right? A kometz is taken and burnt on the mizbeach, and the shirayim, the rest goes to the kohanim. If when the kohanim were eating the shirayim of the minchas chotei, oil was added to it. If oil was added to the shrine, he is not in violation of lo sitin aleh lo yosim aleh shemen. He is not in violation of that law. If oil is added to the shirayim, nasan kli al gabe kli lo psala. Interesting. If there was a vessel, and in the vessel was the flour of the minchas chotei, and then in another vessel was, I don't know, oil, I guess. What is it? I guess oil, frankincense, whatever it might be. And that vessel was put on top of the vessel that has the oil in it. Would that be considered a violation of lo yasim aleh shemen? Don't put on top of it oil. Lo yitin aleh levona. Don't put on top of it levona. So we say lo psala. It is not a violation of that lav. The minchas chotei is not possible if a vessel with oil or frankincense was put on top of the minchas chotei. Zokti gemore tanu rabbanan, the rabbis taught lo yasim aleh shemen. Don't put oil on the minchas chotei. The im some pasal. If one put oil on the minchas chotei, the minchas chotei is pasal. Yachol lo yitin aleh livona v'imnosan pasal. Is it possible that when the pasuk says don't put frankincense on the minchas chotei, if he does, it is pasal? Talmud omar ki chatos. It says, because what does the pasuk say? It says, Lo yosim aleh Hashem, v'leitin aleh levona ki chatasi. He. Lo yosim aleh levona ki chatasi. So it says, levona ki chatas. That meaning, even if levona is put on the minchas chotei, it is still a chatas, and it is not automatically possible. You remove the frankincense, and the minchas chotei is kosher. Yochol af shemen. Is it possible that the same applies to oil? Just remove the oil. Talmud lomar he to the exclusion of oil. Umara isa lifso b'shemen la'achsher b'levona. Wait a second. We have oil. We have frankincense. We say that when oil is put into the minchas chotei, possible. Frankincense, on the other hand, just remove it. Nish geferlich. How come? How come I exclude oil and include frankincense? The answer is, well, it makes sense. Posel ani b'shemji efshel lelakta, machsha ani b'levonish efshel lelakta. Frankincense, you could just pick it out. Again, there are these like little nuggets in there. Pick out the nuggets. Problem solved. Oil is much more difficult because it gets absorbed into the flour. Once it's absorbed into the flour, you can't just take out. You can't remove the oil. So therefore, if oil gets into the minchas chotei, it's possible. If the frankincense gets into the minchas chotei, it's temporarily possible. Remove the frankincense. Problem solved. Baya Rabbi Bar Ravuna Rabbi Yochanan. Very interesting. Rabbi Bar Ravuna asked Rabbi Yochanan a question. How was Rabbi Bar Ravuna asking a question to Rabbi Yochanan? Did Rabbi Bar Ravuna go to Eretz Yisrael? Did Rabbi Yochanan go to Babble? What happened? I don't know. But Rabbi Bar Ravuna Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Bar Ravuna asks Rabbi Yochanan. How? I don't know. If anybody knows, let us know. Nosan aleh livona shchukamau. Okay. Interesting. We've been explaining that the reason, right, that the solution for frankincense in the minchas chotei is to remove it, right? So we say that if frankincense gets in the minchas chotei, nish geferlach, just pull it out, remove it. There's little nuggets, remove the nuggets. What if some ground up frankincense got into the minchas chotei? Obviously, the point being that you can't, if it's like a powder, let's say, you're not going to be able to remove it. So now what? So levona shchuka, if he puts ground up levona, frankincense, on the minchas chotei, so now what? What's the halacha? Do we say mishum de efshir lilakta v'lo efshir lilakta? Do we say, look, the only reason why you can fix a minchas chotei that has frankincense in it is because the frankincense can be plucked out, it can be removed. Masha'en kain, in this case, it can't be removed, so it should be pasul. O dilma mishum delo mivala the nami lo mibala. Or no, maybe the distinction between oil and frankincense is that the oil gets absorbed in the minchas chotei. That's why it's pasul. Now the frankincense, even if it's ground up, it doesn't get absorbed into the flour. It gets mixed in a way that you can't really remove it, but it's not absorbed per se. It's not a liquid. So the question is, do we say that since in this state, the frankincense cannot be removed from the minchas chotei, therefore it's possible? Or do we say it's still kosher because it's not absorbed in the minchas chotei? Friends, what do you think? Tashma, come in here. Ulevona yilkitena. Our Mishnah says that if levona gets into the minchas chotei, pull it out. In this case, you can't pull it out. So I would argue that it's possible, since it's right. The instruction is to pull out the levona. You can't do that here, so therefore it's possible. Dilma chadav od kamer. But maybe maybe what the Mishnah is saying is two things. Kilo, we're just getting kind of the second half, which is chada number one, dilomi ba'al. The main reason really, why the levona in the minchas chotei would still be kosher is because it is not absorbed. The levona is not absorbed into the minchas chotei, and therefore it remains kosher, since it's not absorbed. Ve'od yilkatena, and since it's not absorbed, remove it. Now, if it's ground up and it can't be removed, okay, it can't be removed, but at the same time, it's not absorbed, and therefore it is kosher. Tashma, come near, machshir ani bilevona. I'm machshir when the levona gets into the minchas chotei, she'efshir lelokta, again, because it's possible to remove it, and here it can't be removed. So I should argue it's possible, but once again, ochanami chadav od ka'amar, I could still make the argument that it's saying the main reason why it's kosher is because it's not absorbed, and also remove it. But in this case, you can't remove it. Okay, but it's not absorbed, therefore it's kosher. So again, maya ve'ala, fragdi gemara, nu, at the end of the day, what do we say? If you have this frankincense that gets into the minchas chotei and it can't be removed, is the minchas chotei kosher, or is the minchas chotei possible? Omar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, says Nachman bar Yitzchak, Tanya, we learn in a braise, minchas chotei, uminchas knuis. Minchas chotei, minchas knaos, both are examples of menachos that have no oil, no frankincense. Shenasan alei levona, that levona was placed on the, I'll just talk about minchas chotei because that's our primary example. Milaket esa levona vikshera. So you have to remove the levona in order for the minchas chotei to be kosher. Now, the imad shelo liket levonasa. Now, if so long as the levona was not removed, so long as the levona is still mixed into the minchas chotei, chishev aleh ben chutz lizmano ben chutz limkomo pasul. So if he had a machshavas chutz lizmano, machshavas chutz limkomo during this time, pasul vein bo kares, it is pasul, and there is no chiyuv kares, right? There's no, right? So even chutz lizmano, there's not going to be a chiyuv kares here, since so long as the levona is still mixed in, it is pasul. We're going to ask a question about what about dichoy. We'll get to all that fun stuff in just a minute. But we do see that so long as the levona is still in the minchas chotei, it is pasul. Now, if you did remove the levona, so then by removing the levona, there's no more levona in the minchas chotei, it's now completely kosher. If at this point now you have chishev aleh chutz limkomo, pasul vein bo kares, chutz lizmano, pigul v'chayev nelav kares, right? Once the levona is removed from the minchas chotei, well then it's 100% kosher, in which case, if you have machshavas chutz lizmano, it's pigul and there's a chiyuv kares, chutz limkomo, there's no chiyuv kares, standard pigul rules. So we do see though that so long as the levona is still in the minchas chotei, it is pasul. Now, we had said that so long as the levona is still in the minchas chotei, if you have machshavas pigul, so even after the minchas chotei becomes pasul, right? Because of pigul. Even if you remove the mincha, even if you remove the levona, still it's already pasul because you had machshavas chutz limkomo, chutz lizmano, while the levona was still there. The question is that while the levona is still there, is still in the minchas chotei, shouldn't it have been dachui? Shouldn't it have been nidche? Or so long as it's pasul, you shouldn't be able to have machshavas pigul, right? Pigul shouldn't affect the mincha so long as it's possible. V'tehave pach, it should be no different than if you poured oil on the minchas chotei, and it's possible, and so long as it's possible, machshavas pigul should not affect it. Why are we saying that even if you remove the levona, it's still possible because you had machshavas pigul while the levona was in it? V'amai pasla b'machshava dachuyu, it's nidche. At the time that you had these machshavas, they were possible because of the levona. Abai says, well, we said earlier that even if there's levona in it, it's still called the chatas. It still retains kind of some of its initial integrity, and therefore machshavas chutz zman chutz mkoma is still shaykh. Rav Amar says, Rav Amani Chanan HaMitzri. This is the opinion of, this brisa was the opinion of Chanan HaMitzri, the leislei dichuyin, that he doesn't hold of the concept of dichui. Titania, as well in the brisa, Chanan HaMitzri, Amar says Chanan HaMitzri, afilu dam bakos. This is talking about Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur, there is a sa'ir anaisa bifnim, sa'ir la'Hashem, and sa'ir la'Azazel. And if the sa'ir la'Hashem was slaughtered and the blood was received in a kos, in a vessel, and then the sa'ir la'Azazel, which has not yet been taken la'Azazel, drops dead, so now what happens? Now it happens to the first korban. You haven't done zrikas adam for it yet. The sa'ir la'Azazel dropped dead, so now what? Says Chanan HaMitzri, no problem, maybe chavero shalo ba'agrola umizaviglo. Just go and grab a new goat. Problem solved. You don't have to do new lots. Problem solved. Kilu, you had 2 goats. You slaughtered the sa'ir la'Hashem. You did kabbalah sadam for the sa'ir la'Hashem. The sa'ir la'Azazel drops dead. Now you don't have sa'ir la'Hashem and sa'ir la'Azazel anymore. That's a problem. So it's kind of like temporarily suspended. I mean, it's a problem. There's no sa'ir la'Azazel anymore. But it's a problem, but okay, just fix the problem and all good. There's no issue, right? And you just get a new goat, and we'll just keep moving forward as if nothing happened. The fact that there was there was a point in time when there was an issue, when there was no sa'ir la'Azazel anymore, and now what? You don't have a sa'ir la'Hashem, sa'ir la'Azazel. Just bring a replacement, and it's as if nothing happened. There's no concept of dichui at all. So therefore, it says Rava that this is the opinion of Chanan HaMitzri. He says that there's no concept of dichui. Nothing got pushed off. Maybe something was suspended for a bit, but it's still entirely valid. And therefore, the machshava of chutz zman chutz mkomo, even while the frankincense was in the minchas chotei, it's not like the integrity of the minchas chotei was still there. The frankincense needs to be removed, but once it's removed, the status of pigul is still relevant. Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi kol shebiyado lo ave dachui, whereas Rav Ashi says, look, something that is fixable isn't considered dachui, right? In the case of the frankincense, it's fixable. Remove the frankincense, problem solved. So something that is fixable isn't considered nidche. And therefore, if you're saying, well, when the frankincense was in there, it was nidche, how could the machshavas pigul be relevant? Well, this wouldn't necessarily be considered nidche since it is fixable. Rav Ada says, Rav Ada, kavosi de Rav Ashi mistab, it makes sense like Rav Ashi, deman shamasle, de isle, de chuyin. Who is the opinion bichlal who holds of the concept of dichui? And I'll prove to you that even the one who holds of dichui does not say dichui when it's fixable. Rabbi Yehuda, Mr. Dichui, Rabbi Dichui, is Rabbi Yehuda. The snan that we learn in a Mishnah in Masechta Yoma. The Od Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda, Nishbach Adam Yomus HaMishtalech. That Rabbi Yehuda says that if the blood of the Sa'ir L'Hashem spills on the floor, so now, i.e., the Sa'ir L'Hashem is possible, well then, you can't just bring a new Sa'ir L'Hashem. Yomus HaMishtalech, so the Sa'ir Mishtalech is basically unusable. You let it die, right? Kill it, I guess. It's unusable. It's nidche. You can't just bring a new Sa'ir L'Hashem, and it's not like Chanan HaMitzri who says, But it's not like Chachamim Mitzri said that, just bring a new one and it's as if nothing happened. No. Rabbi Yehuda says, if the blood of the Sar Lashem spills on the floor, forget it. Bring 2 new animals, do 2 new lots, start all over. The other one, the Sar Mishtalech is unusable now. And also the opposite. The Sar Mishtalech dies, Yishafech Adam, you have to spill out the blood of the Sar Lashem, again, because of Nidche. That once one of them dies, the other one becomes possible, and that's it. It's permanently possible, it can't be fixed. Now, but at the same time, even though Rabbi Yehuda holds of Dichoy, the Iluhecha de Biyado, but where he can fix the situation, right, by Sar Lashem or Sar Lashem where the blood spills on the floor, or the Sar Lazosa that drops dead, there's nothing, you can't fix the situation. But if you could fix the situation, Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda, Koshoy Memali Midamata Rovos, Vizarkos Rika Achas Kineged Esod, by the Korban Pesach, if someone's Korban Pesach, the blood spills onto the floor, right? He did Kabbalah Saddam in a vessel, and then from the vessel it spilled on the floor. So what do you do? Right? All the blood spilled out. So the Korban Pesach is possible, right? We say no. The Kohanim would take a cup and fill it up with all the blood. There's a lot of blood on the floor of the Azar when they were offering the Korban Pesach. So they would take a cup and kilu fill it up from all the blood that got mixed together on the floor of the Azar. They would fill up a cup and throw that on the Mizbeach, so that anybody whose the blood of their Korban Pesach spilled out onto the floor and their Korban Pesach was a problem, it'll be fixed by taking this cup and filling it up with all kind of a concoction of all the blood from all the Korban Pesachs, and throw that on the Mizbeach, and problem solved. So even though Rabbi Yehuda holds of Dichoy, as we saw by if the Sar Mishtalech dies, or the blood of the Sar Lashem spills on the floor, there's nothing you can do. You can't fix that. He says Dichoy, it's going to be a problem. You have to start all over. But if there's a way to fix it, then he doesn't say Dichoy, take a cup of blood, fill it up with all the blood, throw it on the Mizbeach, problem solved. We're not going to say Dichoy in that case. So therefore here as well, by the frankincense, since you can fix it by just plucking out the frankincense, so therefore we're not going to consider the minchas chotei to be Dichoy, and therefore the machshavas chutz zman chutz komo will make it possible, even when the frankincense is in there. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, says Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Nasan mashu shemen adabe kazayis mincha. So if you have a kazayis of flour of the minchas chotei, and some oil, a little bit of oil is put on that flour, possible. It's possible because oil was put on the minchas chotei. My time, how come lo yasim? Says lo yasim shemen. Yasim sima koldu, even any amount of placing is going to be possible. Aleha on it, adiika shiura. Aleha means on it, on a proper shear of a kazayis. So you have to have, so any amount of oil on a kazayis of flour of a minchas chotei is possible. Amar Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Yochanan, nosan kazayis levona, if a kazayis of frankincense is put al gabi mashu mincha, on even the smallest amount of a minchas chotei, pasal. My time, how come lo yitein ksiv, don't place any levona. Adiika nesina, there has to be a significant placing of kazayis. Alea, and when it says alea, right, it says lo yosim alea shemin, v'lo yitin alea levona. It says alea twice. The first time it says alea meant that by the oil you have to have a kazayis of flour. But when it says alea a second time by the frankincense, right, don't place a kazayis of frankincense alea. It's again nachamal a second time coming to include a whole kazayis. So it's a riboy. Achariboy, vein riboy, achariboy, ela lema'et, which actually ends up becoming exclusionary, to say you actually don't, by the levona, you don't need a whole kazayis of flour, just any amount will do, and therefore a kazayis of frankincense on any amount of flour by minchas chotei will be possible. V'ika, or at least you'll be at least over on the law, but I guess you'll have to kind of remove it in order to fix it. V'ika, those who say Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Bai Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan asked, Nosan mashu agabe kazayis mincha. I'm sorry, mashu shemen agabe kazayis mincha. Mao. What if somebody put any amount of oil on a kazayis of minchas chotei flour, what's the halacha? Miba'inan sima kinesina olo. Do we need the sima, the placing of the oil, to be like to be like the placing of the frankincense, i.e. a kazayis olo? Or maybe we don't need a kazayis. Teku, it's a tie. Nosan shemen al shiarel. If the kohanim put oil on the shirayim of the minchas chotei, we said he is not in violation of placing oil on the minchas chotei. Tanarabana, the rabbis taught lo yasim ala shemen v'lo yitein. Is it possible that we say lo yasim and lo yitain, in order to be chayiv twice, you would need one coin to put the oil on it and another coin to put the frankincense on it? But if one coin did both, you'd only be chayiv once. Tamulomer aleho, on it, on the minchas chotei. The main thing is the minchas chotei, not the kohanim. Begufa shel mincha kosum v'daber v'lo b'kohen. If the minchas chotei has oil and has flour, has oil and has frankincense, there will be two lavs, regardless of if one kohen did both or two kohanim split it. Each kohen did each thing respectively, makes no difference. You'll be chayiv whether it's one person who's chayiv two lavs or two people chayiv one lav each. It makes no difference. Yachol lo yitain kli al gabe kli ve'imnosan posel. Again, is it possible that if a person put a vessel of oil or frankincense on top of a vessel of minchas chotei flour, it will be posel? Tamlomer alea begufa shel mincha kosum medaber. Once again, it's about the frankincense and the oil being in the flour itself, not if it's in a vessel. That's in a vessel, not that. Friends, that was Daf Nun Tes of Masechta Menachos. On Daf Nun Tes, we learned about oil and frankincense requirements for menachos. We went through all sorts of different types of menachos, and we went through which menachos require oil and frankincense, which require only oil, which require only frankincense, which require no oil, no frankincense. And in the Gemara, we were basically just going through different scenarios and different possibilities of what may or may not require oil and frankincense. And then we got to a new Mishnah about a minchas chotei. Minchas chotei was one of the types of menachos that has no oil and no frankincense. And if somebody does put in oil and does put in frankincense, they will be violating a lav. We talked about how frankincense, however, can be removed from the minchas chotei. And by removing it, the minchas chotei becomes kosher again. And we talked about different scenarios about what if it's ground up, and what if a person has machshavas chutz zmano, chutz l'mkomo, while it has the levona in it, and dichoy, all sorts of things. We did see some interesting halachas when it comes to dichoy, right? That you could say that when we talk about, and this is not the first time we saw this Gemara, right? That when it comes to dichoy, it's a mitzvah if you can actually fix it, so then we wouldn't actually say dichoy, which was an interesting thing. Friends, that was Daf Nun Tes, Daf 59 of Masechta Menachos. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. Cheers.